Well, let's go ahead and get this started then. So welcome to SolarWinds webcast. This is the next logical step for IT, learning business. It is currently May 19, 2020, and we got a couple people here to kind of usher you through this discussion. So let's go ahead and move on, shall we? This is me. Hello. I'm Kevin Sparenberg. I am the technical content manager here at SolarWinds, specifically for the community. So that's Thwack and a couple other public websites. I've been doing computers for a long time. I've been with SolarWinds for about 6 years, and for about a decade before that, I was working with the solutions. So I've had a lot of time with SolarWinds. I have spent a significant amount of time fixing things I've broken myself, and I actually like technology and I like monitoring. So maybe that makes me a weird person, but it also makes me great for having these kinds of conversations. And who do we have next?
Both.
Why not both? Yes.
Definitely. So hi, I'm Chrystal Taylor. I'm new to working for SolarWinds, but not new to SolarWinds. I worked for a partner for many years, and I have worked on many environments, large, small, different industries. I'm considered an expert on most of the SolarWinds products, and I love monitoring. So I'll be weird with Kevin and be happy about monitoring all the things.
All right, so I guess we'll be weird, all three of us. We're the three weird amigos. My name is Leon Adato. I'm also one of the head geeks at SolarWinds. Yes, that's actually a job title. I took it pretty much sight unseen. I've been in IT for about 30 years. I've been focused on monitoring as a discipline for 20 of those years. I've done a lot of other stuff. I'm not reading you this slide. The most important thing to know is that I've been working with SolarWinds since 2003 as a customer and been heavily involved in Thwack, which is our online user community, because naming things is hard, apparently. So I've been involved in Thwack, both as a regular user and as an MVP. And I finally joined on as a head geek in 2014. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, one of the things we're going to be doing during the session is we're going to be popping up poll questions. So please take your time to answer those. They will help kind of inform us, not only for this presentation as we go through and discuss more, but also for future presentations if we decide to keep this series moving forward with additional sessions.
Oh, and I do want to point out that if you look at the bottom of the slide, and I'm going to go backward, there we go. We do have we are on the Twitters and the social media things and all that. So if you want to reach out to us with questions or just to say hi or just be friendly, you can find us on these handles. And I also believe that the slide deck is going to be sent to all the attendees afterwards, so you can find this information. If you are madly scribbling anything that we're talking about, stop it. Stop and put your hands back on the wheel of the car or whatever you're doing and just let the amazing monitoring glory wash over you. Okay, so COVID bingo. I think that in these trying times for over 20 years.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. You know what, guys, but we will totally get through this. Together.
All right. So the reason why we're having a little bit of fun with this is I think that everybody at this point is a little bit fatigued with COVID talk and the cliches that are coming up, but also the constant refrain that this thing that's happening is, and it is different. It is jarring. However, for those of us who've been working in IT, it isn't completely unheard of. Everything is blowing up. We have to fix everything. We have to turn it around. Also known to those of us in IT as Tuesday. Right? It's, we're used to having to make rapid pivots to a new way of thinking, a new way of working, a new initiative. We know how that goes. So a lot of this, while the context in which we're doing it may be different, the methodology or the things that we do aren't. And that's sort of the crux of the conversation, because we want to talk about the things that you have an opportunity now to level up on, to do better, because you have this excuse, you have this reason to do it. And I think the first place that we want to go when we talk about what what can we do more of or better of or different of, given the excuse of the pandemic, is getting a little sassy. And,
I love that we came up with this phrasing.
yes.
Without a doubt, this is my favorite thing so far in this deck, that we're getting sassy.
Yeah, it's absolutely. I think that if everyone would adopt the fact that, we need to be more sassy in your business and have all the executives and the managers like, we have to what? And then you have to explain it. I think that'd be a good thing. So I guess the discussion starts off as why, companies have been moving towards software as a service. There, I've defined our term, software as a service for a while, but what is it about this period of time, and what is it about SaaS that makes companies even more eager than ever to do that?
Well, if I've got to jump out there, I'm going to talk about it's lack of hands. When you actually have something that's SaaS, you don't actually have to worry about having hands. When you have, now I don't mean that in any weird philosophical way, but I mean, if you run your own data center, you have your own infrastructure, you have this and the other, you need your own hands to go and support that. If there is a problem, and you have, we'll take the simplest scenario ever. You have a blown hard drive in part of a RAID array, and all of a sudden performance is going way down. So you got to have someone physically go to this location, pop a drive, slide a new one in its place, click it closed, and wait for it to rebuild. If you're paying a SaaS solution for this, all of that goes away. All of those performance issues that you are personally responsible for go away. The hardware goes away. The infrastructure goes away. Does that mean you stop monitoring it? No, but it's just less lift, I guess. It's less work for your IT organization as a whole.
For you to worry about on-prem.
Right. Yeah. And I also think that this goes back to something that business has been talking about for a while, which is focus on your core competencies, which is, what does that even mean? I'm an IT person. I didn't quite minor in business, but I have been learning business as a second language on Duo. So along with Spanish.
Owl.
I know, right? Exactly. So anyway, I think that when you talk about core competencies, what you're talking about is what is the thing that your company is trying to actually do, trying to actually sell, trying to actually make money on. And if it's not part of that, maybe you shouldn't be doing it. Well, Bob, we need to have electricity in the office, and that's not what we sell. So how are you going to manage that? Of course, but it's not a core competency. So if you can outsource it, if you can not hire a team of 50 electricians like you used to have in the 1940s, but instead contract out electricians or have the electrical company own all of it, that's an okay thing, right? And I think SaaS is the same thing. You're not in the business of selling or building data centers. You're not in the business of installing patches on SharePoint. Thank God.
Yes.
But
I've done that in the past. It is well documented and incredibly painful just for timing.
Right. It's not fun. And it's not part of what the business is in the business of doing. Right. So hand it off to somebody else. Let Microsoft do the patching of Exchange for you. A few of us have noted that this morning, at least for us at SolarWinds, we use Teams internally, and we got the 3x3. We have 9 people on the screen. Did we have to do an upgrade for that? No.
You know what else we got? The hands.
Right.
The raising of hands is in there now. And this is stuff that just kind of slipstreams into your infrastructure. You're working with it. As long as you don't, put restrictions on it, then when it becomes available, it's just there. Office 365, or Microsoft 365 as they now call it, has been doing this incredibly well for a number of years. But they're not the only ones. You have to think about the other people. Force.com, so that's Salesforce and Workforce and a ton of their other spin-off companies. They've been doing it. Mm-hmm. Your organization may be using it for HR solutions, maybe using it for your sales leads, maybe using it for any number of things, and you're not maintaining any of that infrastructure.
Right. And that takes us to the second bullet point. Oh my gosh, maybe I have SaaS and I don't know it. What are the symptoms? Should I check my tongue? Do I have SaaS toes? I don't know. So yeah, it's, you probably do. I would put money on the fact that you're probably using something. If you're using Google Mail, for gosh sakes.
Yes. And isn't it nice that all of those things just work? Like you didn't have to do anything for it. It just works. You just go to it. It just works.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get enough of that in IT.
No.
Until it doesn't, and I think that speaks back to monitoring, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. But yeah, that's the point. Is companies are looking at SaaS because given the pressure of trying to keep the business moving forward, trying to keep selling what you're selling, and I don't mean that in a cutthroat capitalistic way, but a lot of people's companies are doing essential things. And in order to keep doing the essential things, you're really looking at cutting the dead weight in terms of software support, hardware support, whatever. And so SaaS is an easy way to go do that. So that answers the why and the, do you, oh my gosh, maybe I have it. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do.
You do somewhere.
And do we want to do you even need it? I think we've covered that. How would you know? So as monitoring engineers, what do we want to think about as monitoring engineers to make sure we're doing what we need to do for our SaaS software?
Well, we need to know the connection works. First and foremost.
I mean, we want to start at the absolute minimum. Yeah, that's like, is the network down? No, no, it's not down. Can we get to the endpoint? If we can get to the endpoint, that's check number one.
Yep.
Then it evolves into how's it performing? Hopefully there's an API you can touch into, and beyond that, how's the business working with it? Can we extend that API call to say how many tickets were generated, because that is a reference of how well my IT department is working, or how many things went into a resolution state, or how many things moved from this stage to this stage, because that's a business metric, not necessarily an IT metric.
Right. All right, and I think that takes us to the next slide where we're going to talk about I should have redone fear and loathing in the VPNs. Yeah, fear and loathing in VPNs. Yeah.
If you haven't noticed, we love callbacks, so you'll just have to deal with it. We're very sorry.
No, we're not. No, we're not sorry at all.
We're not sorry at all. This makes our day. So here's the thing. It's like, if you have moves, and I actually had this discussion with someone recently, and it was an interesting one. It's like, if you move 100% SaaS, do you need a VPN client?
Okay, so I love security, so I don't understand why you're even asking the question. But keep going.
Yes, I'm just if your authentication is through Azure AD, and you connect to Microsoft 365, and you have SSO that built in through Okta or another product that goes into your Force.com that then goes into this, do you ever need a VPN?
If you're full SaaS?
Yeah. If you're a SaaS stack, start to finish, do you need one?
Probably. I mean, just to protect your own traffic from your own PC.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but that's a personal one. That's not a corporate VPN.
Well, true. Okay,
so I will say that while I understand you in theory, the numbers are against you. And no. What I'm saying is that SolarWinds has done this survey called the IT Trends Report for the last, 5-6 years now, and we repeatedly, year after year, ask, where are you? Are you full stack, full SaaS, full cloud, or are you fully on-prem? And the answer is, in the 80 percentile, everyone is somewhere in between. Yeah. Some stuff is on-prem, some stuff is in the cloud. The percentage of that changes from business to business, but the reality is that very few companies are full SaaS. And even the ones that say, no, we're full stack cloud, when you really get into it, when we, as SolarWinds assistants and helpers, start to ask some clarifying questions, it's like, well, except for that one thing that we still have on-prem.
And that thing happens to connect to these other things and this other thing, but only 3 departments use them. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but those are the conversations we're having, and that's where we developed this discussion about VPN, because when you get down to it, and this was tough for me when I was learning it, that there's really 2 flavors of VPN profile. I'm using the word profile because I grew up on Cisco, so that's the word they used. You had what we call tunnel all, or is what we called it in my last company, which was every bit that leaves your computer that has a destination, regardless of where it goes, tunnels through the internet to the VPN endpoint concentrator, and then from there it goes out. can go out to the internet will more likely go to internal resources. The mail server, the document server, the web servers that you run in-house, your VMs, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
The other flavor of that is a split tunnel, which the split tunnel says, hey, if I don't need internal resources, and I'm going to generalize this, but if I don't need something from the 10 network, 10.0.0.0/8, which is what most corporations use for their internal IP scheming, not everyone. But if I don't need something from that, I need something from Google or O365, or I need something from AOL.com, please not. But if I need something from an external resource that's not owned by my company, then I don't have to push this traffic across the tunnel. I don't have to push it through the VPN. I will split it off and just use my regular internet connection. So there's basically a gatekeeper at my PC that says I need corporate resources or I need other resources.
Saves your bandwidth across your VPN pipes, which definitely is needed, especially right now with how many people are on VPNs.
Well, and it also makes everything snappier. I mean, if you're not dragging things all the way back out and back inside again and then back out again, and I mean, you could conceivably be quadrupling the traffic that is traversing your corporate WAN links.
Oh, easily, yeah.
Yeah. So you don't want to do that. But okay, so Chrystal, because you, as much as I like security, I know that you focus in on it from time to time. So what's the argument? What's the security side argument of that?
Security side of having split tunnels or not having split tunnels?
Of being against anti-split tunnel. What's the problem?
I'm for full tunnel all the time.
Full tunnel all the time. So I think most people that are for full tunnel all the time don't really understand why split tunnel exists. They want all traffic to go through the VPN so that they can monitor all traffic. They want to know what you're doing. For instance, like, why are you going to Google? Why are you on YouTube at 2:00 in the afternoon?
Because I'm a programmer and I don't know how to do anything and I need to Google the answer.
Google IT saves lives, okay? It saves lives, and we all use it, and it's necessary. It's a necessary part of IT. I don't think anyone should pretend that they don't need to Google things from time to time. I don't know what all of the event codes are in Microsoft, so I'm going to go Google something, okay? It's realistic to say you're going to have to Google something at some point in your IT career. And realistically, I would say I Google something every day. I'm going to see something. I don't quite remember what this error is. I'm going to go Google it. Somebody out there has written something about it. Try to make sure you use verified sources. Go directly to Microsoft for Microsoft error codes, please. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I'd say most of the time they don't really understand. It's like, oh, security, security, security. And they're just, they really think that is the only way to be secure. And they want to make sure that their data is not traveling back out. So like that you're not putting stuff out there that you shouldn't be, stuff that should be on the company network, or, company information or intel or whatever. They can't, if they send all of the traffic through the corporate VPN tunnel, then they have more control over it. And I think that's the key to that right there, is that they want that control, or that illusion of control, because I think control is an illusion. So that illusion of control, because at any point, realistically, that, as we know, data breaches occur all the time. So is it any more secure? Maybe. That's an argument that could be made. But not realistically, a lot of companies are not as secure as they should be. So the VPN, is it really saving you? Maybe.
Right.
Is that just doing the in-flight? Because we always hear about data in flight versus data at rest, and this is still just, if you talk VPN, that's a data in flight. That's data moving from here to a corporate infrastructure, or from a corporate infrastructure, then hopping out to the internet. Yeah, it's safe through those hops, but does it matter if I'm saving files to my laptop and then leave my laptop on the train and my, it's not boot locked?
Exactly. Physical access is all access. Once you lose physical access, it's all over. Forget it.
Yeah, so I think, is it paranoia, I guess is the question, Chrystal, in your opinion?
In my opinion, I think a lot of it comes down to paranoia. Yeah, I mean, realistically, people don't trust. A lot of security does not trust their end users, and there is a reason for that. The number one source of data breach is an end user leaving something somewhere, leaving it on the train, losing their phone. They broke their laptop and sold it, or there's. Users are your data breach most of the time. So there's a reason that they don't trust the user. They have that paranoia because it has been earned.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
so go ahead. Yeah.
no, I think we're going to the same place here. It's like, but you have to extend trust to employees at some point. So
Yes.
if you're going to do that, what does that look like?
Yeah, I agree. So what you need is monitoring.
Mhm.
That's what you need. Monitoring.
So I was trying to like circle the trust your users part, but it wasn't working.
Yes, trust your users. It'll be fine. So most of the time, I would agree, it will be fine. I mean, in reality, there are going to be people that through malicious intent or through simply, I'm going to say negligence, are gonna be the cause of a breach. And I don't think that we're ever in the history of time going to be in a place where someone's not going to make a mistake or someone's not going to make a bad decision, and you're going to be able to say we have been breach free for 1,000 years or whatever. Like it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So realistically, what you have to do is have a little bit more faith. Like, especially right now, some of the things that I've been seeing going around, everybody's talking about monitoring, but they want to monitor like crazy extents. They're trying to talk about, see what that your employees are working, see that what you can measure productivity by the fact that the work is getting done. How it gets done is not important.
Yeah,
and I can go off on that. That's a whole nother tangent. I'm not going to get off on that. But what I am going to say is that monitoring is hugely important. So what do you do when things go wrong? Because things do go wrong. You're going to have a failure, or there's going to be somebody who can't connect. And so they're going to decide that they don't need the VPN today. They're going to do it without the VPN, or things like that. There's a lot of ways, especially as things get more sassy, everything moves to the web, then people start to think, well, I don't need my VPN for anything. And I'm at a point, honestly, in my career where I don't need the VPN for many things. There are like 3 or 4 different things that I have to get on the VPN in order to do, and everything else, Office 365, and we have a whole bunch of front-facing websites. You don't need VPN for everything in your infrastructure. And realistically, you don't always need it for everything anyway. I mean, if you have a VM on, let's say you host a VM on your laptop, and that VM goes through the corporate infrastructure, well, you could do those things through there. Or you just jump on for whatever. It depends on what your job is and what you're doing, but definitely things can go wrong. What you need to do is monitor your VPNs. Monitor.
Right, and the last point I want to make before we move on is that if you don't allow split tunneling, then what's going to happen is exactly what Chrystal, what you're talking about. People are going to shut off the VPN when they perceive they don't need it. And sure enough, they're going to try to access something that really ought to have had that split tunnel because there's a multiple, and either they're not going to get to where they need to go, in which case it becomes a help desk call, in which case it becomes frustrating for everybody, or they're going to accidentally expose an aspect of their work that would have been protected otherwise. So just to keep it in mind. But
yeah, because realistically, the end users don't really understand why anything needs to go over a VPN.
Right. Well, and there we go. But to the point you just made, monitor. I think that we probably ought to show some of the stuff. Like, what are we talking about when we talk about VPN monitoring? So we've got some labs here, and yes, please keep me signed in. Not like that. Let's see here. I tried to keep everything rolling, but it did. It did. Yay! Okay, so I want to point out before we go too much further, where we are is at demo.solarwinds.com, and everybody can jump on this at any time, day or night, and kick the tires on just about everything that we're using. So I wanted to make sure that you knew that, and that's what we're showing you. It's not some super duper secret, hyper optimized demo lab environment that only we have access to. Everybody can work with that. And what we're looking at here is the VPN. Now, there's 2 kinds of VPNs. There's site-to-site and there's user connection. So obviously, we're looking at the user connections. So the question is, what can we do here?
Well, I'd like to point something out immediately. You can see right there, the first one that's connected has been connected for 4 days. Now, first of all, I don't know about you guys, but why are you connected for 4 full days to the VPN?
Because you forgot.
There's no interruption.
Yes.
Well, you can set that up on the IT side of things. You can set it up to disconnect after a certain amount of time for most VPNs.
Mhm.
Why are you connected for 4 days? Like immediately that is a thing. And when we were looking at this yesterday, Kevin pointed out things that you can look for, like when people are jumping on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off. That's gonna show all those connections in here. What are they doing? What are they connecting to? It shows their public IP. It shows the virtual IP. So what are they doing? That's what you want to know. Why are they connected? How long have they been connected? How many users are connected? That's all important.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the key point. And if it actually has a problem, if they have a disconnect, because all of these are clean connections, but if you actually have a connection failure, we'll tell you at what stage it failed. So at phase 1 in negotiation, or phase 2 during, key exchange or stuff like that, because it just kind of helps you troubleshoot these kinds of things. And it's also searchable by the username, which in a lot of organizations has gone, or at least I found has gone to a first name dot last name kind of mentality. So you can quickly search and find somebody. Yeah, there she is.
Right.
So being able to just kind of have this information. Now, don't get me wrong. This information was accessible. This is available in the CLI. I used to do this with the VPN concentrators where I could, show connected users. I cannot remember the commands anymore, so please don't judge. It's been a number of years. But where you could show the connected users and pipe that out and, filter things on, and that's great. But that's one extra step. This is a view you can actually give to your help desk.
Uh-huh.
And you don't need special network access to view these things. So when Diana calls and says, I can't get to these things, your help desk person can say, well, Diana, you've been connected for 4 days. We pushed out patches 2 days ago. You probably need to reboot. I'll hang tight. Why don't you do that?
Right.
Whatever the scenario is, but being able to actually up-level your help desk to give them this kind of knowledge, let them understand how these things work is critical. I'm just going to say it right like that. The more people in IT, help desk, and up, whoever answering the front line on your phone, help desk, service desk, whatever you want to call them, if they have the same access to the information that you have, that you can monitor and bring in, and they know what they're looking at, they're going to be able to do their jobs more effectively. They're also going to be able to filter tickets so that you don't get going around on goose chases for dumb scenarios.
Save yourself some time.
When they can tell that I'm going to pick on the CEO because it's always fun and because they typically aren't on WebExes to call me into their office after, you can tell that the CEO connected at 8 o'clock in the morning, disconnected at 8:30, connected from a completely different IP address at 9 o'clock, and suddenly disconnected 5 minutes later. And when they call and say, the network is down, I don't understand what's going on, and you hear the noises in the background, say, are you at Starbucks right now? Because it kind of sounds like you're in Starbucks, and I can see that you're in Starbucks. Like I can see that the IP address is, consistent with, or whatever it is. Your first level responder can do that without having to escalate, without having to bring in network knowledge. And that becomes even more important when you talk about the other kind of VPN, the site-to-site VPNs, right? And that's what we're looking at here, where you can see how long something has been up, has been down, and then also in the different stages of setting things up, where, like, what worked and what didn't work along the way.
Yeah, this is a simple scenario where you only have 2 of these site-to-site VPNs. And maybe that's the way your environment works. You only have 2. But I've been in places and worked with customers who have dozens of these, if not, 30, 40 of them. And, some are more critical than other ones, but they're all important to watch. And you need to make sure they're all up and operational. That way all your branch offices can talk. And I like the filters we have on this one. The filters we have on the user one are useful, but the filters here, that's a lot of ways to slice and dice this information.
Yeah, and when you have dozens, it's much more critical to be able to filter so you can find what you need quickly without you got 2, you don't really ever need to change your filtering. But when you've got pages of these things and you can filter a bit better, that's huge.
Especially with your bandwidth usage, it's super interesting to actually see how much is used over time. Being able to just grab that information and put that right into a perf stack, and then compare that with maybe some applications that are running during the same time span, or, this is the window when backups run that go over the same VPN connections, or, just stuff like that. Being able to have all this information and have it available, not just to the network engineer, not just to the monitoring engineer, but to all of the members of IT where this is important is something that we need to get better at about being transparent. And that I think is a great place for people to evolve maybe their career objective from network monitoring to holistic monitoring as an organization.
Yeah, visibility is huge. And realistically, I mean, the more you look and the more you talk about it, the more those lines are being blurred. I mean, how often are you being asked to go work on something that wasn't, I mean, let's say you're a network admin. How often are you having to go fix some application or go troubleshoot somebody's PC? I mean, if you're in a huge enterprise organization, maybe that's your only job. But if you're in a smaller shop, I mean, realistically, you're going to be doing 5 or 6 different things at any given time. And most of the time, monitoring is only one facet of your job. And if it's only one facet and you're only focusing on network monitoring, well, you're missing out on a lot of other things that could be helping you and saving you time and saving your company money on a day-to-day basis.
Nothing was ever siloed. We liked siloed thinking because it helped us scope our work, but the actual service we were providing. And I would also say that as much as we talk about the business core competencies, you know, the business focusing on what it does and it's selling to customers, IT also has to decide what is a core competency. So Chrystal, back to your point, if you're fixing PCs, well, you're not. Let's face it, you're not. That's been outsourced. That's been outsourced to either an MSP, or it's been outsourced to some sort of contracting house, or it's been outsourced to Amazon. You know, my repair is actually just a replacement and sending it into Dell for swaps or whatever it is. Keyboard replacements, no, there's just a stack of spares. Nobody does that work. And the challenge is that as people are working their way up the ranks, okay, we're going to be working on VPN. The what? Maybe they understand VPN from their user standpoint. Again, they know VPN from this, but then you say site to site. And if they only had the iOS commands to hang on, which many of us did, like you understood experientially what it was, but when you talked about the VPN establishing a connection, all you had were iOS show commands to tell you whether it worked or not. But what you're giving them is this visualization of, I've made it through the 3 stages. I've made it through, you know, I've got this much bandwidth coming in and out. I've got it right here visibly. Now those iOS commands make so much more sense. And so you're able to provide, again, your newer or your newer staff, or the staff who's tangentially related, the server team who actually is interested in network, but that's not their day-to-day job. You can provide them with information so they can begin to understand the nature of what they're experiencing, whether it's an outage or a slowdown or whatever it is. So I think that that's absolutely true. The last piece that I think we should talk about, although it's tangential to that, is firewall rules and what you can tell. Now, this is all coming from the product called NPM, Network Performance Monitor. But this is showing on a Palo Alto firewall. This is our policy, again, you know. But not only are we seeing that, we're seeing the type of data and who's talking between that is hitting this firewall rule. So when we talk about visualization, visibility of our tunnel, of our site-to-site tunnel, visibility of how our users are experiencing their personal VPN, we also have the visibility of not just the firewall rule, what's allowed in, what's allowed out, but which data is actually taking advantage of it over the course of time. And this also helps us to know whether what we think is happening, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
It's also, this is good for proving your point. It's like, no one's using this VPN because we've gone SaaS. Yes. It's like, but we've got all these spikes. Those are 40K. There's no traffic going here. This is an ICM. This is a ping. Just ignore that. This is non sequential. And that's kind of one of the great things about the Orion platform, though. It's like we built this with NPM in mind, this kind of monitoring, and then you add Network Configuration Manager to kind of pull out the policy details, and then you take the NetFlow Traffic Analyzer, pull and take the policy details and split off into that. It's just kind of we jokingly say it's Voltron, but I still think it is Voltron. The more you hook up, the better it gets. So
right.
Yeah, that visibility, being able to prove your arguments, that's all part of the businessese that needs to be learned. I mean, if you can use data, real data, historical data to show the utilization of things going down or the utilization going up. I need more bandwidth. I need whatever it is. You have data and visuals in pretty colors so that your C-suites will be so happy to see it. It's not gray data, you know, it's information, and it's information that they can clearly see. Well, that's red, so that's a problem. Okay. So, you know, you having visibility and allowing visibility really will help you with your arguments for, you know, new equipment or new applications or new VPNs or whatever it is that you need. Having that data, having that monitoring information where you can prove to them, this is what's going through there, this is what's happening here, this is why you should care, and here's my plan to make this better.
Right. And that actually takes me to another thought. So next slide. What matters and what doesn't matter? You know, proving your point. And I want to take a minute and talk about bandwidth availability and why nobody gives a crap. With availability.
Except C-suites.
Except C-suites and people who don't actually understand bandwidth availability. And the reason why I mention this now is because, again, with everyone remote and with everyone possibly not using split tunnels and dragging quadruple the data through, everyone's like, "Wow, bandwidth available, we need to monitor our bandwidth." And you probably do. But I really take offense to anything that talks about bandwidth hogs or bandwidth vampires or bandwidth bandits or any of those things. And yeah, I'm making fun of some stuff that may be near and dear to the corporate brand's heart, but again, the CEO doesn't always listen to these, so I probably won't get called into an office about it. But anyway, bandwidth is not important in the same way that monitoring CPU by itself is not important. Kevin, if you had, if I gave you no other information than the bandwidth on, you know, circuit number 7 is constantly running at 95%, what would you say to that?
We bought it at the correct size.
Right, exactly.
We're leasing just the right amount. We've got a little bit available for bursting, but otherwise, no, we're paying the exact right amount for that WAN circuit.
Right, exactly. That is the problem with with only monitoring bandwidth and alerting on high bandwidth utilization, is that without any other context, it doesn't make any sense. And so, again, like I said, it's a pet peeve of mine. So the monitor and alert that you actually need is not bandwidth over, you know, 95% or 20% or what. Okay, so another pet peeve is anytime you have a fixed number, that fixed number will be wrong in at least some of the cases. And so you end up creating an alert that is a one size fits most, like if you can do it, but it's still not a one size fits all. You know, bandwidth over 95%. Well, actually, in this case, it's 80%. Oh, actually, in this case, 70% because we burst a lot. So what's a solution for a fixed number? How do you get around that?
Baselines.
There we go. Okay, I was gonna say, yeah, baselines. And for those people who aren't familiar or aren't privileged enough to have a tool that does baselining, can you go into that a little bit more?
Sure. So you create a baseline, and I recommend this any place where it's capable of doing so for monitoring anything that has numbers involved. You create a baseline. Basically, you get to say, okay, well, we monitored this thing for 7 days, and this is what it does on average during that 7 days. And you'll also get like a min max for that. You'll get you'll be able to say, here's the peak times, and all of that information is now your baseline. So you can say, this is the normal. We've monitored it for X amount of time. This baseline means this is our normal activities. And I'm using air quotes on normal because what is normal? But normal, this is our average normal activity.
Leon nearly snarfed his drink.
I almost spit out my nose. What is normal anyway? Who are we to talk about normal?
Well, let's talk about, well, if we're going to do that, can we talk about the new normal while we're at it?
No.
Everyone take out your bingo cards. Hit that one.
Yeah. Yeah, so you use that baseline now to compare against traffic. So when you have things that are outside the normal, that's when you want to know about it. Is it too high? Is it too low? Are you getting specific spikes? And then you can say, okay, well, I've gotten a lot of spikes in the last 2 days that are more than our normal. Do I need to reevaluate what my normal is? Or is this just like an attack? Or is this a specific application maybe that's going overboard and needs to be adjusted. You know, you can make some decisions based off of that information by comparing what's happening now to what happens normally.
Yeah, and unfortunately, without baselines, a lot of that's tribal knowledge.
Yes.
Like, I always knew that 11 p.m. local time backups kicked off. I knew that, but I was the guy that watched those kinds of processes. So, but it doesn't mean the help desk knew it when all of a sudden they got alerts that, or calls from people saying, we can't copy files from San Diego to Detroit, or it's going really slow. And we're like, oh, well, backups are like, I know this, but all of a sudden they don't. But if we had a monitoring solution that was aware of these baselines and knew when things were taking place, we could be like, this is normal within degrees of deviation.
Well, and imagine how key something like that would be for like a cab meeting when they're making choices for timeframes to make changes. Well, okay, if this is going to be interrupted because this is the same time our backups run, well, maybe I need to pick a different time to do my change so that it's not interrupted or failed or anything like that. And now I have to go to another cab meeting because we all know no one really likes to go to those.
Right, and I'll say that what you just described, you know, if I knew backups were running, well, there's the problem, because no one's going to ever have that knowledge. So you have to call 50 people into a cab meeting, half of which the people aren't paying attention and don't answer the question and aren't listening. However, if your monitoring tool tells you, by the way, normal bandwidth utilization for Tuesday from 8 p.m. to 12 p.m. to 12 a.m., 11:59 p.m. is at this height, and you say, I don't know why that happens, but that's our normal bandwidth utilization for that time period. I'm not going to pick that. I'm going to stay out of the way of that without needing to know the cause of that thing. I just know that normal utilization at the time is not consistent with the work I want to do. So you don't need to have, I mean, maybe you want to ask the why later, but that's not the decision factor. The decision factor is, not a good time to pick to do this outage or to do this maintenance, so I'm not gonna. So with that out of the way, with the alert that does not use a fixed number, that uses just if it's 20% higher than normal or whatever, instead, with this, what this monitor is doing is, instead of just looking at bandwidth utilization, it's also going to look at response time along with bandwidth utilization. Because if bandwidth is higher than a certain level, meaning 5% higher than normal or 10% higher than normal or whatever, and the response time through that interface is also high, that tells you you've got a bottleneck. That tells you that there's something that either you need more bandwidth or you need to relieve the pressure by moving some services off of that circuit or whatever it is, but that's actually a problem. But if all you had was consistent high utilization, as Kevin said earlier, that just means that you bought the right size circuit. Go you. Good for you.
Good job.
And as a logic point, what that looks like, what that sounds like, is this: where bandwidth utilization is greater than threshold or status, again, greater than a fixed number if you have to, or status, meaning it's 10% higher than normal, okay? And response time is greater than the value for, here we have two standard deviations. So that's fine. Okay, that's one way of doing it. Again, you could do it as response time is greater than a fixed number or what have you. And the issue persists for more than a period of time, because if it happens from a second, nobody cares. That's called bursting. If it happens, and you're going to have to know in your environment when you actually want to draw a line in the sand and say, no, if it's going on for more than 10 minutes, I really want to know about that. In most cases, bandwidth utilization, because it is bursty, you're looking for a longer duration. That's the monitor set. Go ahead. Yeah.
I would say too, what attributes to that specific time frame number also should be what your monitoring is doing, because if you're doing active monitoring and not reactive monitoring, if you're doing active monitoring, it's going to be on a fixed time frame. So 20 minutes might be 2 polls, it might be 3 polls, it might be 4 polls. So whatever that needs to be to make sense to you, because what your monitoring is doing is very important. So if you're monitoring something and you only monitor it once every 20 minutes, well, 20 minutes is a bad value for you to choose for something like this, because there has been no delta.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's when you change the logic in there and say issue persists for more than 3 polling cycles.
Yes.
And hopefully you have realistic polling cycles. If you have 20-minute polling cycles, that's probably a little too nice, and you should be a little more aggressive about pulling data in.
Aggressive. Yes.
Okay, so a whole other conversation is dynamic polling cycles.
Yep.
That the importance of the device determines the polling, how often and how frequently you poll it. And again, a robust, competent monitoring solution will let you dynamically allocate polling cycles to your more important machines and take them away from your less important machines. But that's another conversation for another day. A few slides back and about half an hour ago, Chrystal, you mentioned something about knowing whether you're connecting to the service. Like, are you actually even connecting to the service? And that takes us to a whole other topic. Do you want to dig into that?
Yes, absolutely. Netpath Navigator, because we love it so much and we always talk about it. And we're going to talk about it today too, because that is when Kevin and I were talking about SaaS earlier and about the connection, making sure that is connected. That's your most important, not your most important, your first piece of monitoring that you should be doing. So we're going to talk about Netpath. Netpath is great. And I feel like a lot of users or people who view the demo site may not realize right away that you can do more with it than just monitor a website. You can do more with it than just do a monitor of a web port. When you install the demo of NPM, it sets up a Netpath monitor for you, and that Netpath monitor goes to google.com. But so a lot of people will go into it, in my experience, I've worked with lots of different people. They will go into it thinking that's what you do with it. You monitor port 80 or port 443, and you go to the endpoint and it checks for you. But it can do so much more than that, so much more. And it will help you with your SaaS monitoring. It will help you with your VPN monitoring if you want it to. And we were talking about this semi recently about putting Netpath probes out on a few, key workstations to monitor across that VPN to make sure that the connectivity is good. So what Leon is showing here is a Netpath to one of our Azure SQL databases. Again, on the publicly facing demo, so you're feel free to go check these out yourself. And where you can see right there on the end, immediately, there's a breakdown.
But there's no problem anywhere up to there. Like, which of these routers is actually failing me?
Yeah.
None of them.
None of them. Okay, so what am I looking at here?
So what you're looking at is a full connection from your selected probe point all the way to the endpoint, which we'll say is that Azure SQL database, and then everything in between, all the places it can possibly hit in through that connection. So you can see here it's all spider webbed out. Those are all the different possibilities for a connection, their response times, and everything like that. And I've used Netpath personally to do some extreme troubleshooting and have had customers take this information back to their ISP and say, what is this? Why are we getting these numbers? Why are we getting this bandwidth? This is not right. And what we're seeing here is that there's a breakdown at the Azure SQL database right there at the very, very, very end, which tells me there's probably a port that's not being allowed. Like that's probably right there at the very end. There's probably another firewall, or maybe it's not running. Also possible. So that's where the breakdown is here.
Right. You're getting all the way through to the end. And by the way, we were talking about ports, and if you've seen Netpath but you haven't really set it up, just want to emphasize that you don't have to do port 80 or 443. You can actually do any port you want to. So,
TCP port.
Any TCP port. Yes, exactly. So you can do any port any TCP port you want to, and in this case, it's perfect for a database running on the standard SQL port. So that's a good one.
The other thing I want to mention is down at the bottom where we have our path history and we go through, you see the slices, but you can see the lower slice. The top is like the general availability. It's like, can I get to any point? But the lower slices, was latency injected somewhere along this path? And you can actually go to that time slice and see where latency appeared. So you can actually see that, and I think it's a pretty decent example. This one's just at the very last hop. But you'll actually see, if we bring up one of the links, any of the links really, you'll actually see the latency between these two different things. So this is 69 milliseconds. There's a 24% transmit likelihood, which basically means from the previous hop, that BE7 up to the AE123, there's a 24% chance it's going to go over there. And if your data does go over there, it's 69 milliseconds to go from one side to the other. This is information you can go back with the networking team. Like, let's say that's msn.net. Well, I'm probably guessing that's Microsoft, but I don't know how to contact Microsoft and say, hey, you got some problems.
Oh, I can tell you how to do that. There you go.
Oh, well, there's the phone number, the AS number, and some email addresses from Microsoft that I can call and say, you're having a problem with router 104.44.17.179. It's injecting latency when it's connecting to AE dash dash dash, and then they start crying.
Well,
because they're so happy someone reported this and they don't have to find out from themselves.
Yeah, when we first released this, we were afraid that our customers were start to get like FBI cease and desist orders, that the ISPs were going to say, you know, how did you get this information? I'm going to, you know, you've hacked me. And that's actually not the case. That the majority of time when you call up, it's what I affectionately have started to refer to Netpath as Tinder for network engineers. So their response is, can I give you my cell phone number? Like, if you see this again, will you call me? Because this is a view of their network that they can't have. Because again, what you're looking at is your experience of the network end to end along. Now, this is kind of a sad view because it's never worked. The firewall rule has gotten in our way. But we got another one here. Yes, keep me signed in. Why are you doing? No, not like that.
Refresh.
Yep. Let's do a refresh. This one is showing our connection to an AWS lab setup. And it'll come up here in a second.
But that's just one of the benefits of something like Netpath. Is like we can use this for anything, and if we use it as stage one of like a multi-stage monitoring process, if we use this as stage one of, can I connect to endpoint X, whatever it is? Okay, this tells me yes, I can get to X, I get this much latency, I get this much, you know, transmit likelihood. It's going through these hops, everything's good. Then you said you have an alert built around that Netpath. Does this Netpath work? Yes, it works. Great. Then you talk stage two is, what are the metrics that I'm getting from the APIs that are published by this lab? You know, this lab is running port 80, so it's probably running Apache or Nginx or IIS or something like that. So can I monitor that endpoint? Can I pull those metrics in as well? And if it's a true SaaS app, can I go through Microsoft's offer something like Graph, and AWS offers similar ones, and Force offers one. Can I go through the Graph API and pull specific information for those? And the first stage is all network, and the second and third stage are very much systems and application monitoring. And we as SolarWinds just can't write everything for those, so we have the shared space on Slack where people can put their own stuff. In fact, one of the recent ones that was put in by someone who's not an employee, I don't think, was Azure Resource Capacity Network. You can actually watch the Azure resources and the network through the APIs on that. So sorry, that was my little dance while we were loading.
No problem. So here, what you can see is, you know, as we drill down and drill down, when I took this away, it looked like all the problems were in here. Well, okay, most of the problems were in here. There was one little problem over here where we had 21% packet loss on 60, and 65% of my packets were traversing through that route. But it looked like everything was breaking down sort of all in here. But when I exploded it out, I can see that it's really just the connectivity between this, you know, on this link, and then also there's a problem over here that the majority of the network, and this goes back to visibility, that if you can clearly explain what you're seeing and experiencing, the people on the other end of the phone are much more likely to take you seriously. We've all gotten the call from the, you know, abuser, not the end user, the abuser. The internet is down. You need to fix it. Okay. I can't do anything with that. Like, there's nothing I can do with that. But if they were to call and say, it seems like switch port number 27 through 32 are dropping packets everywhere. Are you sure you don't have a duplex issue? First of all, I'd want to try to see if I could get them into the IT department themselves. But second of all, it's like, that was oddly specific. I will go check that now.
Thank you for telling me exactly how to get from A to B. It's Google Maps for network engineers.
Yes, and I would like to point out too that if you have NCM, you can get even more information in here where you can find out if there's been a config change, if there's a breakdown that is unusual, you can find out if there's been a config change, and then that way you can go reverse it or alter it to correct the issue.
And if you have NTA, NetFlow Traffic Analyzer, you can actually select the interfaces and actually see the ingress and egress through that interface, at least the top 4 or 5 things, because limited resources here. But you can click on it and jump to the actual interface and see it in the full blowout. So it's all about presenting this data in a way that's easily consumable, but gives you links off for more details.
So we've got about 5 minutes left. And I wanted to open it out to the floor and see if anybody had any questions or thoughts about things. And
So I'll check the Q&A here. We've got a few things. The first question was, will we be getting a copy of the presentation? Yes, the presentation will be provided to registrants after the event. And then someone asked if they were going to get our email addresses, and the answer to that is no. But you
But you can find us on everything.
You can find us on everything. We did put our social information in there, so feel free.
And we are all three on Thwack way too much.
Yes, and I see there's another poll up as well. If you guys can check that out while we're going through Q&A. Let's see. Just starting to move to split tunnel for Cisco WebEx. Awesome. Hope you're monitoring.
Nice. Watch it. WebEx actually has a really decent API. So you can use the SAM template, server and application monitor template, to actually call to the WebEx API with your credentials and tell how many connections you're getting. Oh, and you should also be using Netpath to watch the WebEx traffic, at least from internal.
Yes.
So another question, which is really interesting, and again, a longer conversation. I understand the business model for contracting out quote unquote all the work out. However, don't you think that that down spirals, that creates a negative morale effect because the providers of services, keep on nickel and diming and reducing services? I'm paraphrasing the question, and it lowers the outlook for current and future employees. I think that if a business does it intelligently, meaning we are going to focus on the things we do well. We are not going to waste your time as IT professionals doing things that are busy work and are obnoxious. Who wants to be a DNS administrator anymore? Like, nobody wants to be a DNS. Who wants to be a desktop support engineer? And just walking machines around and fixing, nobody. If you're outsourcing either strategically critical or strategically critical aspects of the IT department, or you're outsourcing things that are deeply important to a project or a particular effort, then yeah, that's going to have a problem because you're not going to get the level of commitment and service you want. But if you're talking about day-to-day stuff, and again, maintaining the Exchange server, outsourcing the support of the Exchange server is not going to reduce morale of your IT department significantly, at least except for the Exchange administrators, which is a whole other thing.
No. I was an Exchange administrator. I will argue this because most of your job is not making sure servers run. It's making sure mailboxes are accessible. Your job doesn't change, just where you do your job changes.
Fair enough. Okay. Somebody said the company where I work does not allow split tunneling. Because of security concerns like download infected files. I'm sorry. And B, yeah, that's exactly what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that can be fixed in air quotes. That can be fixed with very good endpoint protection, whether something like Intune or an MSP offering or something you run yourself. If you have good endpoint monitoring, which is not the topic here, but it's a separate one we could totally have. If you have good endpoint monitoring and AV control and malware protection, a lot of that can be alleviated, but you're right. You're probably never going to get everyone in corporate America to say, oh no, that's totally cool. We should allow that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's all we've got time for. We're right at the top of the hour. If you have questions, we're going to hang out here for a little bit. We'll answer questions in the Q&A. And there's also, you can answer that poll, and we're able to know a little bit more about the kinds of things that you're interested in hearing about next. As we've said a few times, you can find us on Thwack. You can find us on the Twitters to ask some more questions or just start a conversation. And we appreciate you taking time out of your day to sit with us as we babbled about the stuff that we love.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.